Have you ever wondered what a child sees when death knocks too soon? What if that child was you? Most people think near-death experiences are something only adults talk about. Stories told in hospital beds, full of second chances and white lights. But what happens when a soul barely touched by life is suddenly dragged to the edge of something no one should ever see? I was just a child. No sins heavy enough to carry me to darkness. No time to understand right from wrong. But during a routine surgery, my heart stopped. And for a moment, so did everything else. What followed wasn't peace. It wasn't light. It was hell. I remember the chill of the operating room, the brightness of the lights blurring above me, the way my tiny hand held onto a stuffed bear, like it could protect me from what was coming. I remember the nurse's voice, soft but distant, saying it would be okay. And I remember the voice in my head, one that wasn't mine, whispering from somewhere deep inside, "Don't close your eyes." Those 3 words have never left me, because when I did close them, I wasn't in the hospital anymore. You think you understand what darkness is, until it breathes around you, until it sees you, until it calls your name. This isn't a story. This isn't a dream. This is what I saw, and I came back to tell you, not everyone does. If you've ever had a near-death experience, or lost someone and wondered where they went, stay with me. Comment below if you've ever felt that strange pull in your sleep, or the sensation that something is watching when the room is silent. And if your heart's already racing, go ahead and subscribe. Because what comes next isn't just my story. It could be a warning. And it all began the moment my body went still. It started slowly, almost gently, as if slipping into sleep. But it wasn't sleep. It was something else entirely. I felt my body getting heavier at first, like sinking deeper into the table, like something was holding me down, pulling me beneath. The surface of the world I knew. The voices around me became muffled, like they were underwater. Then, all at once, the weight disappeared. I didn't feel my arms, my legs, or my chest rise and fall with breath. Everything I knew about my body vanished. I wasn't lying on the table anymore. I wasn't anywhere I could name. And then came the drop. It wasn't physical, not like falling off a chair or slipping downstairs. It was worse. It was the sensation of being ripped away from something solid and thrown into a place where nothing made sense. There were no walls, no floor, no ceiling, just darkness. Endless, pressing darkness. I tried to understand it, to find some logic, but my mind couldn't grasp where I was. I kept falling, or maybe floating, but this wasn't peace. This wasn't some warm tunnel with a light at the end. This was hollow, silent, wrong. My heart wasn't beating. I didn't even know if I had one anymore. But the fear I felt, it was beyond physical. It was in my soul, clung to me. And in that endless void, a sound began. Faint at first, almost like breathing. Slow, deep, rhythmic. But then it shifted. It grew rougher, more guttural, almost like an animal, or something pretending to be one. It wasn't coming from far away. It was around me, all around me. That's when I tried to scream. I opened my mouth, or at least I thought I did, and nothing came out. Not a single sound, no echo, no whisper, just the same suffocating silence, the kind of silence that crushes you. And then I realized I wasn't alone. This wasn't just some blank space my brain invented to cope with anesthesia. This wasn't a dream. It felt too real. Every part of me, every instinct, every flicker of awareness told me that something ancient had noticed I was there. Something that wasn't surprised to see me. Something that had been waiting. I wasn't moving anymore, but I wasn't still. The space around me pulsed. It moved like it was breathing too, but not like lungs. Like something massive, something alive was watching, hiding just outside my reach. And yet, I felt its presence as if it was inside me. My chest burned with dread, not pain. Dread, like I'd been peeled open and something was crawling through who I was. The air, if you could call it that, felt dense, like smoke without fire, like heat without light. I began to wonder if this was the moment people talk about in those near-death experience videos, where they say they float above their bodies and see loved ones or hear beautiful music or feel at peace. But there was none of that here. This wasn't heaven. This wasn't comfort. This was the opposite. I tried to think of my parents, of home, of anything that could ground me, but it all slipped away like sand through fingers. I couldn't remember their faces. I couldn't even remember my own name. I was losing everything, not just my life, but my identity. And that's when the fear turned into something colder, hopelessness. It crept in, slowly, like a fog, and filled every part of me. Not because of what I saw, but because of what I didn't see. There was no end, no up, no down, just black. And I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't pray. I was just there, suspended, forgotten. Every second stretched forever. Time didn't pass. It twisted. I felt like I'd been there for days, or maybe only a heartbeat. I couldn't tell. I didn't have a body anymore, but something inside me still knew I was trapped. Not physically, but spiritually. And that's the part no one talks about. The soul knows. The soul feels. This wasn't just darkness. This was absence of everything, of joy, of warmth, of hope. I wanted to cry, but I didn't have tears. I wanted to scream again, but there was no sound. I just wanted someone to find me, but no one came. No one even knew I was there, except whatever else was with me, because it didn't feel like I'd stumbled into this place. It felt like I'd been dragged, like something had opened a door beneath the world and pulled me through. And now it was watching, patient, silent, as if waiting for the right moment to make itself known. And then something changed. The air trembled, not from wind, but from presence. Something was about to happen. Something I couldn't explain. Something I didn't want to see. But I had no choice. I was already past the threshold. I didn't fall like in the stories, where people describe soft descents or peaceful drifting. When I landed, it was like hitting a surface that wasn't solid, yet wasn't air. It was soft, wet, and foul. My body, or whatever form I had now, sank slightly into it with a sickening squish. The stench was immediate. Rot, sulfur, and something else. Something like death itself had soaked into every inch of this place. I couldn't breathe, but the smell invaded me anyway, like it wasn't passing through lungs but straight into my being. It clung to me, seeped into me, until I felt like I was made of it. The darkness was no longer empty. It had shape now, and worse, it had movement. The ground beneath me pulsed, not with vibration, but with a rhythm. It felt like a heartbeat, slow, deep, but not mine. The earth itself breathed, and every pulse carried a faint echo through the air, like whispers riding on the back of each thud. The whispers weren't random. They formed syllables. They circled me, and then they said my name. That was the moment I realized this place knew I had arrived. It hadn't just been waiting for someone. It had been waiting for me. The air was dense and choking, not just physically but spiritually. It felt like every breath I didn't take was still suffocating me. And then I saw the glow, not a warm light or a divine beam. It was red, dim, dull, almost like the last ember in a dying fire. But it wasn't dying. It pulsed in sync with the ground, and it came from deep ahead. It didn't light the path. It barely revealed anything, but it drew the eye, and something about it whispered danger. Around me, shadows twisted. They didn't have forms, not exactly, not like people or animals. They moved like they had no bones, no rules, like nightmares crawling through fog. Every time I tried to focus on one, it melted back into the dark, but they never left. They circled. They watched. I couldn't see their faces, but I felt their eyes. Cold, ancient, patient, not curious, expectant. That feeling of being watched. It didn't just grow, it consumed. It wasn't like being looked at from across a room. It was like being studied from inside your soul. Like something was peeling you back layer by layer, cataloging everything you'd ever done, everything you'd ever thought, even the things you forgot. I felt exposed in a way I didn't know was possible. The whispers grew louder, and more voices joined. Some sounded close, right beside my ear. Others echoed like they were deep inside a cave, or inside my own head. They said things I didn't understand at first. Names, questions, condemnations. Some laughed, some cried, some begged. One voice, chilling and low, said only this: "You're not supposed to be here. Not yet. But we knew you'd come." The worst part? I believed it. Somehow, deep in my soul, I knew I had been here before. Or maybe I had always been meant to come here. Maybe every small wrong I ever did led to this moment. I was just a child. But down there, innocence doesn't shield you. It exposes you. The red glow grew a little brighter as I took a step, though I don't remember moving. The ground squelched beneath me, as if I was walking on living flesh. Each step sent vibrations through the floor, and I felt like I was being tracked. Like something was beneath me, just under the surface, waiting for the right moment to rise. The landscape was shifting, slowly. The darkness opened up to show jagged shapes in the distance. Not buildings, not mountains, more like twisted ruins of something that used to be alive. The walls bled. The sky above wasn't sky at all. It pulsed, with veins of crimson, like the underbelly of something monstrous, and I was inside it. Suddenly, I heard laughter. Not joyful, not mad, cold, mechanical, cruel. It sounded like something that had forgotten how to be human. It didn't echo from one direction. It came from everywhere. Like the very walls of this realm found my presence amusing. And then the laughter stopped. Everything froze. There was silence, not the comforting kind. The kind that presses against your ears until you think your head might burst. The kind that makes you beg for sound, even if it's another scream. That silence was followed by the sensation of being touched. Not physically, but spiritually. Like something reached inside of me and brushed against the center of who I was. It didn't hurt, but it made me tremble. It was a message, one I didn't want to hear, but couldn't ignore. You are not alone here. I turned, or at least tried to. My vision shifted, and that's when I saw more clearly. There were others in the shadows, figures, some human-shaped, some twisted beyond recognition. Some stood still, others writhed in place like they were stuck in a loop of agony. Their faces were half visible, frozen in mid-scream, or wide-eyed in horror, but none of them moved toward me. It was as if they couldn't, or weren't allowed. A few locked eyes with me. That's when I realized they weren't just strangers. Some of them, I knew. I couldn't name them, but I felt them. They had crossed my life in some way. A teacher, a man from a grocery store, someone who once yelled at my mother. They weren't supposed to be here either, but here they were. And every one of them looked at me with the same expression, warning. Their eyes pleaded, not for rescue, but for silence, as if telling me, don't speak, don't ask, don't let them hear you. But it was too late. The ground beneath me quivered, the red glow flared, and something enormous began to stir in the distance. I couldn't see it, but I could feel its size, its awareness, its hunger. Before you continue with this content that shows you what it's like to stand face to face with eternal judgment, you need to check out the ebook, Secrets of Life. This book reveals deep teachings from the scriptures, truths long forgotten by many, lessons that will strengthen your faith, restore your spirit, and help you understand God's path even in your darkest moments. It's not just another book. It's a warning, a spiritual map for those who feel on the edge, between faith and emptiness, between the calling and the abyss. You don't have to wait for a life-altering wake-up call to open your eyes. After this video, click the link in the description and begin your spiritual turnaround today, because tomorrow might be too late. The moment that presence awoke, everything shifted. The red glow that pulsed in the distance throbbed like a heartbeat, growing stronger with each passing second. The air thickened, heavier now, filled with tension so intense it felt like my very essence was being compressed. That choking pressure wasn't just around me anymore. It was inside me, crawling beneath my skin, coiling around my mind like a serpent preparing to strike. I wanted to run, to scream, to close my eyes and make everything vanish. But I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot, held there by something invisible, yet overpowering. And then the shadows began to form. At first it was subtle. The movement in the darkness shifted from vague suggestions to more defined shapes. Faces started to emerge, one by one, but they were not whole. These were not the faces of angels, or lost loved ones, or kind souls waiting on the other side. These were broken, disfigured, tormented. Their skin looked scorched, flaking, blistered. Some had holes where eyes should be. Others had gaping mouths, yet made no sound when they screamed. Their cries were silent, but thunderous in my soul, echoing inside me with a pain that defied reason. They hovered just at the edge of the dim light, twitching like puppets with severed strings. Every detail of their agony was too vivid to be imagined. These faces weren't just burned by fire. They were warped by something deeper, something spiritual, as if they were not just being punished, but erased. Their identities melted into expressions of suffering, but somehow I still recognized them. One of them drifted closer, slowly, no footsteps, no motion of legs. It simply approached, floating as if the space between us didn't matter. The closer it came, the more familiar it seemed. The lines of its face weren't entirely lost. It looked like someone I had seen in life, a neighbor, a teacher, someone I passed by 100 times without knowing their name. But here, in this place, their face was a canvas of despair. It stopped inches from me. No words were spoken from its mouth. There was no mouth, but I heard it, felt it inside my mind. You knew. The voice wasn't angry. It wasn't loud, but it was certain, final. It rang with a truth that bypassed logic and pierced directly into the center of my soul. I didn't understand what I was being accused of. I was just a child. What could I possibly have known? But the face didn't care about my innocence. It stared into me with eyes that didn't blink, and somehow its sorrow became mine. I felt my chest tighten, as if something was being poured into me. Something heavy, thick, cold. The guilt wasn't mine, and yet I felt it like it had been with me forever. More faces followed. Some moaned, others wept with eyes that had no tears. They surrounded me, forming a circle I couldn't escape. Their bodies remained hidden in the dark, only their faces pushed forward into the dim red glow. Each one stared at me with recognition. Each one seemed to say the same thing, without saying it aloud. You chose. The pressure in my head began to build. Not like a headache. It was deeper, like something was being forced into my mind. Images, thoughts, emotions. I saw flashes that didn't belong to me. A man yelling in a dark room. A woman crying over a broken mirror. A child alone in the rain. These weren't memories from my life, but they invaded me as if they had always been there, hiding beneath the surface of my consciousness. Every image carried pain, regret, shame, and every image made the pressure worse. I clutched my head, or thought I did. My limbs were no longer mine, yet the sensation of trying to protect myself remained. The faces began to chant, not with voices, but with presence. Their silent screams vibrated through the space like waves. Each one rippled into me, dragging more unwanted memories into my core. I couldn't separate what was real from what wasn't. My thoughts were no longer my own. I was drowning in the weight of 1,000 sins that didn't belong to me, but were now tied to me. The red glow flickered, and with it a wave of heat surged through the space. It didn't burn skin, it scorched the spirit. I felt it ripple across the circle of faces, making them convulse, twist. Some wail louder, others vanish into the smoke, but some grew closer. So close their cracked, peeling skin nearly touched mine. One face, half melted and oozing something black, leaned close enough that I could see the faint reflection of myself in its eyes. It smiled, and I heard the voice again. We are you. I tried to step back, but there was nowhere to go. The floor beneath me was no longer stable. It shifted like mud, thick and consuming. My legs sank, not from weight, but from force, like the ground itself wanted to pull me under. The more I resisted, the more the faces leaned in. I felt the guilt multiplying, like a storm building inside my skull. Thoughts raced. Who were they? Why did they blame me? Why did I feel responsible? And then the whispers changed. They no longer said I knew. They began to say I ignored, that I closed my eyes, that I allowed it, that I was warned and did nothing. I didn't know what they meant. I didn't understand, but my spirit did. Deep down, something old and hidden inside me began to surface. A memory not from my body, but from my soul. A moment I had forgotten. A choice I had made. Small, seemingly harmless. But here, in this place, nothing is small. Every choice echoes. Every action lives forever. The pressure in my mind exploded. I saw flames, not fire that burns flesh, but fire that burns truth. I saw chains made of regret, each link forged from decisions long buried. Saw mirrors, cracked and stained, reflecting versions of me I never wanted to acknowledge. The child who lied, the child who hurt, the child who laughed when others cried, the child who looked away instead of speaking up, and the voices around me sang louder, now in unison. Not angry, not vengeful, just resolute. You saw, you turned away, you allowed, you chose. I fell to my knees, or maybe I was already kneeling. I couldn't tell anymore. The difference between standing and falling meant nothing. Here, I was no longer in control. My spirit was unraveling, thread by thread, and as the faces moved in, closer than ever, their eyes began to glow, not with fire, but with memory. Each gaze showed me something, a moment, a consequence, a soul shattered because I didn't act. I was just a child. But in this realm, time, age, and excuses don't matter. Only truth does. And truth, I was learning, has no mercy. And then, in the midst of the chaos, all the faces stopped moving. The silence returned, heavier than before. And something beyond them began to rise. Time itself seemed to stall, the whole cavernous nightmare locking in place as though some unseen hand pressed pause on the horror tableau around me. The faces that had been inches from mine froze mid-contortion, their blistered skin suspended in its grotesque dance of agony. The oozing darkness ceased its restless breathing. Even the distant red ember, that malignant pulse of hellish energy, dimmed to a dull coal. For an instant, everything, sight, sound, sensation, flattened into absolute stillness. In that hush, a single note of awareness welled up, not beating against my ears but resonating from the deepest chamber of who I was. It rose like a bell tolling beneath the surface of water, each vibration rolling outward in ripples that pushed back the suffocating gloom. The instant I heard it, I knew it was no hallucination born of fear. It was a presence, steady, sorrowful, yet fierce, slipping past every barrier of flesh and spirit to speak inside my core. It formed words the way light forms dawn across a black horizon. This is not your time. The sentence was neither command nor plea. It was declaration, carved in authority older than the pit itself. And the moment those words manifested, the faces recoiled as though scalded by a flame invisible to me. Their ruined eyes widened in collective shock, then terror. A hiss like steam escaping a cracked furnace rose from their voiceless mouths. They shrank back, dissolving, into torn banners of smoke that retreated toward the edges of the void, desperate to escape a force they could never challenge. The ground answered next. Beneath my knees, the pulsing flesh shattered, not in fragments, but in jagged fissures that spiderwebbed across the living floor. Pale light, faint yet unmistakably different from the red ember, leaked through every crack, as if an enormous lantern had been struck beneath this hellish skin. With each widening seam, the malicious heartbeat weakened, its rhythm stuttering, faltering, strangled by the sudden surge of foreign brilliance. A second tremor followed, this one more violent, a convulsion that ripped open new chasms and sent clots of black residue spraying upward. For the first time since plummeting into this nightmare realm, I felt something like wind, but it did not blow across my face, it pulled against me. Gravity flipped, the devilish soil lost its claim, and I was yanked upward with a jerk so fierce my spirit seemed to stretch. My stomach lurched, though I knew I had no stomach here. That impossible current tugged not just at whatever phantom limbs I possessed, but at every memory, every ache, every ounce of shame the faces had forced inside me. As I ascended, the landscape below peeled away like layers of diseased bark. I glimpsed rivers of ember-lit tar snaking through canyons carved by eternal regret, pits where shapes writhed in chains of thought alone, corridors of smoke lined with doorways that led only to mirrors of one's own failures. All of it receded, shrinking beneath the widening radiance spilling from cracks that now gaped across the entire terrain. Each beam of that strange light splintered the darkness further, breaking open pockets of shadow the way sunburn banishes frost. Yet for every foot I rose, the pull grew heavier, not lighter. It was as though the light was not lifting me but extracting me, prying me free of hooks buried deep inside my identity. Those hooks dragged at guilt I had absorbed the lies I had accepted, the wrongs I might one day commit. I felt them tearing loose, some snapping, others clinging until they ripped away pieces of emotion I thought were mine. Sparks of memory, moments of childish cruelty, flashes of selfish silence, flared and fell like burning paper scraps, left behind to drift into the abyss. Somewhere far below, that red ember flared one final time, a violent heartbeat of indignation at losing its prey. The roar that accompanied it shook the void so fiercely the light around me fluttered, but the upward surge did not relent. In that instant, I sensed an ancient rage clawing at my heels, furious that the claim on my soul had been challenged. Rings of shoutless cries spiraled after me, a chorus of condemnation demanding I return to judgment, to torment, to the fate the pit insisted I had earned. But the voice that lived within me, a voice that felt both impossibly vast and intimately familiar, rose again. It did not shout. It simply repeated the truth. Not your time. The roar below crumbled into a distant rumble. The hooks lost their grip. Faces that had lingered at the rim of shadow retreated, some in terror, others in jealous despair, as the flood of light widened into a radiant funnel. The fissures that had birthed that brilliance converged into a single column around my ascending form. The sensation of movement changed. It was no longer a violent jerk, but a swift, smooth rise, like slipping into an unseen current that knew the exact path home. My awareness sharpened, colors returned, though faint, like the first hints of dawn brushing a black horizon. I sensed the boundary between this cursed pit and something else entirely. A veil, thin but absolute, lay just above, pulsing with a warm spectrum I had nearly forgotten. Gold, ivory, soft rose, everything hell could not counterfeit. The closer I drew to that veil, the more another feeling built inside me, something like warmth, yet different from physical heat. It was relief intertwined with deep ache, bittersweet and powerful. It felt like forgiveness wrapped in sorrow for all that had been witnessed. It poured into the hollow spaces the guilt had carved, filling voids but leaving tenderness where the wounds had been, as though to remind me that scars can teach while they heal. I sensed a horizon line approaching, a boundary of blinding radiance so intense it burned without pain. Beyond it, I felt vibrations of voices, real, human voices, calling names, speaking prayers, pleading with operating room urgency. Their words were muffled, as though underwater, yet every syllable thrummed in step with my heartbeat, a heartbeat I suddenly remembered having. Then the veil trembled, thinning to translucence. Shapes pressed against it from above, blurred silhouettes of masked surgeons, arcs of fluorescent lamps, the glint of steel instruments. The world of the living, hovering just an arm's reach away, awaited me. The light around me surged one last time, wrapping every inch of my being in a luminescent cocoon. The pit beneath vanished into a pinpoint of ember, swallowed by brilliance. The hooks released, the faces receded, the roar fell silent. All that remained was the hum of monitors, the smell of antiseptic, and the electric anticipation of breath about to return. I exploded back into the operating room with a scream so raw the sound cut through metal and skin alike. Scalpels jumped in startled hands and someone cursed under a mask as clamps rattled onto a tray. My chest heaved, but my lungs dragged for air that felt too thin, too bright, too alive. White light stabbed after the black nothing I had just escaped, and every corner looked wrong, too sharp. Like the shadows, there were hiding teeth. I tried to sit up. Straps bit my arms. Panic tore through narcotics, and monitors began a shrill alarm that sounded exactly like the pitch of the faces when they had blamed me. Nurses spoke my name, soft, coaxing, pretending this was ordinary post-op confusion. They did not know the pit still clung to my skin like smoke. My parents burst in, eyes swollen, an avalanche of relief breaking into questions I could not answer. I looked at them, but I saw flickers of ember glowing behind their shoulders. Ghost images overlaying reality the way nightmares bleed into dawn. A surgeon told them I had flatlined for under 2 minutes. He called it an adverse event. He called it handled. I lay there thinking the language of the living was too small to hold what had happened. The first night on the ward, the room never went fully dark. A low strip of fluorescent light under the bathroom door kept the space a sterile silver. Yet when I blinked, the strip pulsed red, in time with an impossible heartbeat beneath the floor. The whispers crept back, thin as smoke through vents. They never used words I could repeat, only breathed reminders that distance is an illusion. I pressed the call button until a nurse came and adjusted pillows I did not need adjusted. She asked if pain kept me awake. No, I thought, only eternity. Days passed, and I spoke nothing. Doctors called it post-operative mutism, trauma-triggered silence common in children. They ordered evaluations, scans, gentle therapies. None could scan the soul. I spent hours staring into the reflective glass of the wall clock, convinced at any moment a burned face would replace mine. Sometimes I saw the second hand hesitate, as if time itself still doubted whether I belonged here. When speech finally returned, the words felt like foreign currency, too light for what I carried. I told no one about the voice that had saved me because even remembering it made my chest ache with a gratitude so fierce it bruised. I told no one about the guilt the pit had tried to braid into my spirit, because some guilt stains the tongue when spoken aloud. I learned to nod, to pretend, to say I was fine. And the world accepted the lie because the world is eager to believe children heal quickly. But night after night I felt the temperature shift just after midnight. A hush settling so thick the room might as well have been buried miles underground. That was when the whispers slipped free again, brushing my ear with promises that I had only been loaned back, that I still owed time in the dark. On those nights, I squeezed my eyes shut until they burned. The voice that had rescued me never answered, but the memory of its sorrowful power flickered like a pilot light, enough to keep despair from taking full root. Years rewound the scar on my chest into a faint line, but they did not cauterize the fissure inside. I grew taller, learned algebra, laughed at lunchtime jokes, yet every mirror held the faint expectation that a melting grin might appear over my shoulder. Every church hymn about salvation triggered a phantom pull downward, as though the pew floor might open and reveal veins of living rock. I became an expert at looking composed while counting heartbeats until a sense of normal returned. Dreams remained treacherous ground. Some nights I floated above my childhood bed, ceiling turning into that endless void, gravity reversing again until I felt the hooks catch. I would wake sweating, sheet tangled, the smell of sulfur lingering though the window was open to cold suburban air. Other nights I stood back in the operating theater, monitors flatlining while surgeons shouted, except this time no voice intervened, and the darkness rushed like a tide. Each dream left a residue that clung to waking hours, making routine tasks tremble with hidden weight. Silence became the loudest reminder. In moments when conversation paused or corridors emptied, I heard the faint echo of faces chanting accusations, a chorus sewn into the seams of quiet. I filled life with noise, music, chatter, city streets, anything to resist that hush where memory prowled. But still, in the crack between two spoken sentences, I might feel the floor throb once, a cruel pulse that didn't belong to any mortal building. People love neat endings. They want the miracle survivor, the life-changing lesson, the bright pivot toward hope. I wish I could offer that ribbon-wrapped conclusion. I did survive. I was granted more heartbeats, more chances to choose light over indifference. But survival came paired with a shadow twin, a fragment of night that refuses to fade. And maybe that is the real warning of near-death experience stories we rarely voice. Sometimes you come back carrying proof that hell is not just folklore but geography, and your passport stamp never fully expires. If you are still watching, maybe you feel a chill in your chest right now, a question tapping at the edge of belief. Have you ever glimpsed a place that logic says cannot exist, yet your soul recognizes instantly? Tell me in the comments what haunted corners of near-death or impossible darkness you have faced. Your story could be the lifeline someone else is desperate to grasp tonight. And if this journey kept your pulse racing, hit subscribe now. We travel these shadowed roads together, hunting for truth where light and terror meet. And the next story might be the one that changes everything, for you, or for the part of me that never truly left that burning pit.